It starts in a place most people never admit out loud, a quiet, uncomfortable truth that has been growing between men and women for the past decade. It's a truth that now defines modern relationships more than love, more than chemistry, more than compatibility. Because today's world has created a psychological distance so wide that even to people who want each other can always reach across it. And this is where everything begins, with the feeling men carry deep inside that no matter what they do, it won't be enough. And the feeling women carry just as deeply that no matter what they give, it won't be appreciated. Somewhere between these two emotional worlds, something broke, something subtle but powerful. A psychological rift that explains why modern men can connect with modern women the way previous generations did, and why so many men quietly opt out, stay single, or remain emotionally distant even when they are in a relationship. To understand the modern dating world, you have to understand that men and women are not struggling with each other. They are struggling with the invisible expectations that the modern world has placed on them, expectations that have warped how they see themselves and how they see each other. The story begins with the shift that happened when society told women to be everything at once, strong but gentle, ambitious but nurturing, independent but still willing to settle down. And it told men that they needed to change but never handed them a roadmap for how to evolve, leaving them stuck between who they were taught to be and who the world now expects them to become. This gap has grown into psychological pressure for both sides, making communication feel like a battlefield instead of a bridge. On one side, you have women who have finally claimed their autonomy, their voice, their earning power, and their emotional freedom. And on the other side, you have men who are being told that everything they were raised to believe about masculinity is outdated, oppressive, or unattractive. When these two forces meet, something explosive happens, something confusing and painful for both sides. The modern man approaches relationships with a silent fear of failure, of rejection, of being judged for not being successful enough, confident enough, or emotionally perfect. The modern woman approaches relationships carrying the weight of past disappointments, emotional labor, and the constant societal pressure to choose wisely because one wrong relationship could derail her dreams, her stability, or her identity. So when these two people meet, they are not meeting as man and woman. They are meeting as two psychological systems shaped by different forms of pressure. This is why communication feels strained, why expectations feel impossible, why dating feels exhausting. Because the relationship is not just between two people, but between two entire worlds of internalized fears and desires. Men today struggle to connect because they feel observed, scrutinized, evaluated, not for who they are, but for how well they perform in a world where failure has become unforgivable, where vulnerability is demanded but rarely rewarded, where strength is expected but criticized if displayed in the wrong way. And so, men begin to retreat, to avoid emotional risks, to protect themselves from the humiliation of not being enough. This emotional retreat is often misinterpreted by women as a lack of interest, a lack of effort, or a lack of emotional maturity. But in reality, many men are drowning in silent pressure, unable to express what is happening inside them because modern society has never given them the emotional vocabulary to translate their internal world into words. Meanwhile, women carry their own internal storms. The pressure to succeed, to be emotionally aware, to have boundaries, to have standards, to protect themselves from heartbreak or exploitation. These pressures create a defensive emotional structure that can be perceived by men as cold, demanding, or unapproachable. But in reality, it is a survival mechanism built after years of cultural and personal experiences that told women not to trust easily, not to settle, not to be naive, not to be vulnerable with the wrong person. These defenses, combined with men's emotional retreat, create a perfect psychological standoff. Men feel rejected before they even start, and women feel disappointed before connection even begins. This unspoken tension grows into a rift, a silent emotional canyon where both sides feel lonely, but neither side knows how to speak the language of the other. The more this rift widens, the more relationships feel like games, like negotiations, like auditions, instead of something natural. To understand why modern men can't connect with modern women, you have to understand what men fear in today's world: rejection, inadequacy, judgment, emotional exposure, financial instability, and the fear of being replaced, outperformed, or dismissed. In the digital age, comparison is constant, and social media has amplified women's access to attention, validation, and alternative options. This makes men approach relationships with hesitation, caution, and sometimes avoidance because the emotional risk feels too high. On the other side, modern women fear choosing the wrong partner, wasting their emotional energy, losing their independence, and repeating the trauma of past relationships. So they approach dating with heightened standards, stronger boundaries, and a deep desire for emotional maturity in men. But many men feel unequipped to meet those expectations because they were never taught emotional communication, vulnerability, or introspection, not out of unwillingness, but out of absence of guidance. This is the core of the psychological rift. Men feel unqualified, women feel unfulfilled. Men feel judged, women feel unheard. Men feel pressured, women feel disappointed. And both sides see the other as the reason for the disconnect without realizing they are reacting to the same invisible force, the modern world itself. The more society pushes individualism, independence, self-prioritization, and emotional protection, the harder it becomes for two people to truly merge their lives, to compromise, to trust, to be patient. Modern culture teaches people to leave at the first sign of discomfort, to walk away when someone is not perfect, to choose freedom over commitment. This creates relationships built on conditional love, on fragile emotional structures, where one argument feels like a warning sign, one flaw feels like a deal breaker, one mistake feels like betrayal. And so the rift widens, not because men and women are fundamentally incompatible, but because the modern world has taught them to guard themselves instead of understanding each other. Men today are not emotionally absent by choice. Many are emotionally overwhelmed, lost between outdated expectations and modern demands. Afraid to express weakness, scared to be vulnerable in a world that sometimes weaponizes vulnerability. They withdraw not because they care, but because they know how to bridge the emotional gap. Women today are not too demanding. They are exhausted from carrying emotional labor alone, from navigating a world that constantly evaluates their worth based on success, appearance, independence, and relationship choices. Their emotional guardedness is not a rejection of men, but a protection from pain. When you place these two psychological realities together, connection begins to fracture, not from malice, but from misunderstanding. The reason modern men can connect with modern women is not because men are broken or women are impossible, but because both sides are living through one of the most intense psychological shifts in human relationship history. A shift where traditional roles have collapsed, but new ones have not yet been built, leaving both men and women wandering without a map, searching for connection in a world that keeps pulling them apart. And the truth is, the rift can only be healed when both sides recognize that they are not opponents, but reflections of each other's spheres. That men's silence is often a shield, and women's boundaries are often scars. That both sides are protecting themselves from the same pain, the fear of not being enough, the fear of being hurt, the fear of being unseen. When men and women finally understand the emotional world the other is living in, then connection becomes possible again. Not through perfection, but through empathy, through patience, through the realization that both sides have been shaped by forces much larger than themselves. Healing the psychological rift begins the moment both look at each other not as threats or disappointments, but as two human beings trying to survive the same emotional storm. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe for more.